The movie begins with a male professor named Hobby who is making a presentation. He discusses artificial humans or humanoids developed at a research center called Cybertronics, where he has succeeded in creating a female humanoid called Sheila. Besides being provided with artificial intelligence, Professor Hobby wants to create a humanoid with feelings and love like real humans. However, he was ridiculed by some of the audience there. 20 years later, there is a husband and wife named Henry and Monica. They are sad because their only son, Martin, has been in a coma for years. Can't bear to see his wife crying over their child's condition, Henry told one of the Cybertronics employees about what he and his wife had experienced. Not long after, the employee took Henry to meet Professor Hobby, who had more than 20 years of developing artificial intelligence or AI, as he had presented decades ago. The problem experienced by Henry became a golden opportunity for Professor Hobby to test the results of the research he had done so far. He made the robot as similar as possible to Henry and Monica's children. After that, he wanted to see the interaction between them. The robot is named David and is a children's robot equipped with AI and impulses similar to conventional humans. However, the decision to bring the robot to Henry's house did not get approval from his wife, Monica. So, when she saw David greeting and smiling at her, she cried and didn't agree if he stayed at the house. After that, there was a quarrel between the two, but with patience. Henry explained that David's presence in the house was not to replace their son but only as a friend and entertainer. Although David was created using a capable chipset and technology, he is still not much different from conventional children, who seem not used to a new place to live. After that, David asked Monica to put on a nightgown for him, but it made her feel fragile and cry because she remembered her son, and she went out and asked Henry to dress it for him. The next day, David seemed to always follow and pay attention to what Monica was doing to make her uncomfortable. But actually, his goal is to just learn everything without intending to interfere with her activity. However, without her knowing it, his presence can divert the mood and sadness she often experiences when alone. While eating together, David was given a plate and spoon, but no food was on the plate. This was done deliberately so that he had more human instincts than humans. Monica's closeness with David seems to be getting closer day by day. However, she burst into tears when she accompanied him to sleep because she missed and remembered her son in a coma. After that, Monica thought of taking a big decision, namely, applying software containing programs to the chipset in David's body. David would assume she was his mother, which would be permanent without resetting him. Long story short, the software was successfully installed into David. From then on, Monica became cheerful again, as if she had found a substitute for her child. She also treated him like a normal child and gave him a teddy bear with artificial intelligence, just like him. Sometime later, Monica received the shocking news that her son, who had been in a coma for a long time, had regained consciousness and was gradually returning to normal. It actually became the beginning of her dilemma because, on the other hand, she had loved David as much as her son himself. After returning home, Martin learns that David is just a robot. He was amazed at David's physical form, which didn't even look like a robot. Martin's return home makes Monica's love to be divided. When she reads a story about Pinocchio, a wooden doll that was given life by a blue fairy, David also feels like the Pinocchio story he had just heard, even though it was only a fictional story that did not exist in the real world. The next morning while having breakfast, Martin taunts David for not putting any food in his mouth. It made David feel compelled to put spinach in his mouth, but it was clear that he couldn't do it because it could damage the machines and devices in his body. Because of that, David had to be rushed to Cybertronics for surgery due to the spinach that entered his body. Monica and Henry were also very worried. It was seen from the tight grip on David's hand, and without them knowing, it was witnessed by Martin. He felt afraid if his parents loved David more than him. Afterward, Martin slowly devised a plan so that David was hated by his parents. David was told if he wanted to be loved by his parents more, he had to cut his mother's hair secretly. After that, David went to Martin's parents' room and brought the scissors. He shaved Monica's hair, and the piece fell right in front of the teddy bear. It then makes them wake up and think David will hurt them. But after being explained, they finally understand that Martin is jealous of David. That's why he told David to do that. However, they are worried about David, who is sometimes difficult to control. Because of that, Henry proposes to return David to Cybertronic, but Monica disagrees because she thinks David is like her child. When it was Martin's birthday, David didn't forget to give him his homemade gifts. At the same time, Martin's friends bullied David and said he was not human like them. Worse yet, they had time to hurt him with a knife. The frightened David immediately took cover behind Martin and caused them both to fall to the bottom of the pool. After the incident, Monica had time to think about throwing David into the forest. However, she was moved when she read his letter, which contained expressions of the heart of a robot who loves her like his mother. Even so, she still wanted to do her plan. According to her, the decision was better than she had to return David to Cybertronics. She told him she wanted to take him to the countryside the next day. Long story short, Monica stopped in a forest area, took David down, and left him in the area. He looks sad and doesn't want to part with her there. After going through several talks, she was finally forced to leave him. On the other hand, a male robot named Joe was created as an entertainer with an attractive face. He has a charming appearance and is also given the ability to change hair color and style. One day, Joe got a call to a hotel room from his customer, and when he arrived at the hotel, he was shocked when he realized that the customer had died covered in blood. Afraid of being involved in the murder, he decides to hide in the forest. Back to David, who was seen walking in the dark forest. From a distance, he saw a car that dumped various used robot parts, and there were seen many incomplete robots scavenging the pile of used spare parts. At the same time, Joe, who ran away from the hotel, was also seen there, along with the arrival of an object such as a hot air balloon which turned out to contain the organizers of the exhibition of used robots. Apparently, robots will be destroyed because of human pain and fear of more robots being created. Not long after, many robots, including David and Joe, were caught. After that, the organizer brought them to the location of the show. Arriving at the location, a teddy bear was seen that had managed to escape. It willingly followed David and was accidentally seen. Suddenly, it was taken by a girl. Afterward, she came to the committee to tell them that a boy was accidentally trapped there. Shortly after, the committee rushed to ensure that the boy was a human or just a robot. The committee was surprised after observing David's condition. Turned out, he is the best quality and very rare robot on the market. However, the event owner still wanted to destroy him even though the committee disagreed with it. Joe, who believed that David was the only key to being free from there, pulled and defended him from the owner's grasp. But instead, Joe was dragged along and tied with him onto the stage. When the show's owner explained the mechanics of destroying the robots, David screamed in fear to invite the audience's reaction. Many thought he was a real child, so they felt sorry and rejected the show. The audience immediately threw stones at the event owner until the show became chaotic and failed to continue. Shortly afterward, David, Joe, and the teddy bear escaped into the forest. David told Joe his wish that he wanted to meet a blue fairy who could turn Pinocchio into a real boy. The all-knowing Joe also has an idea and takes him to Rough City to find information about the blue fairy. The city they are talking about is a repository of all the information about the human robot. After that, they rush there. Arriving there, David did not want to waste time and immediately asked Joe to look for important information that they wanted to know. They are interested in a tool called Dr. No, which visualization of the tool similar to Albert Einstein. After they asked many questions to the device, it explained that the blue fairy was only a character in a fairy tale. However, if David persists in wanting to meet the blue fairy in the real world, he can go to the end of the world where there is a weeping lion there. From then on, Joe asked David to bury his dream. Because what Joe knows, the end of the world that Dr. No is referring to is a place very far from where they are now. And whoever goes to the end of the world where the lion weeps will not be able to return safely. As they walked away from the information tool, suddenly 2 police officers came who wanted to arrest Joe regarding the death of his customer in a hotel room the other day. Because David is obsessed with being a real human, he suddenly drives a police helicopter to help Joe, and then they escape and go to the end of the world. Turned out, the end of the world where the lion weeps in question is the place where the current civilization is destroyed due to the shifting of the Earth's plates. It causes most of the land to be inundated by tidal waves of seawater. Soon afterward, David and Joe arrived there. And yes, they saw a lion crying there, which turned out to be just a statue of a lion spitting water from its mouth and eyes. There is also the tallest building, which they believe is the residence of the Blue Fairy. When David and Joe entered the building, they were greeted with an inscription that read, "Go, O Son of Man, into the waters and the wilderness, hand in hand, for the world cries more than you understand." Reading that, David felt happy because he thought the writing was intended for him. But when he entered a room, he was surprised to see a robot identical to him. David, who has emotions like humans in general, immediately hits the decorative lights on the robot. After that, Professor Hobby appeared, who turned out to be in the building that had been his secret residence all this time. In fact, David's presence is the result of his hard work so far. David is the first robot who was created with feelings and has his own will, which starts from just listening to a fairy tale, being given love and affection, having dreams, hopes and desires to be fully loved by going through a long journey to find a blue fairy to be able to achieve his dream. This also makes David the only robot who has a will of his own, unlike other robots that are programmed to obey or rely on certain human-made settings. Although David thinks this is all a mistake, for Professor Hobby, this is the first step to the next level for the world of robots and artificial intelligence. Professor Hobby then asked David to wait a moment, while he wanted to tell and show his colleagues the results of his decades of hard work. Shortly afterward, David entered a room where several robots looked like him. Seeing that, he felt he wasn't special, and thought his mother wouldn't love him like his own son, Martin. David, who at that time was daydreaming on the edge of the building, plunged into the sea while lamenting his life. Joe, who was watching him from afar, immediately lifted him from the bottom of the sea. David then said that he was like seeing a blue fairy at the bottom of the sea. Before Joe had time to respond to his story, the police arrived and arrested him. Before parting, Joe advised him to never forget him when David became a real human later. David, still curious, returned to the bottom of the sea with a teddy bear using a small boat. Arriving at the bottom of the sea, the blue fairy turned out to be just a statue that was once a former game vehicle. However, without him knowing it, his ship hit the rope of one of the rides there. David kept hoping the fairy granted his request. Suddenly, one of the rides collapsed and hit his ship. Until then, the sea conditions gradually froze. The scene then switches to the future. 2,000 years later, the Earth's condition has been covered with ice, making the whole Earth freeze so that humans are only history. The Earth came from creatures from advanced civilizations in the form of aliens who aimed to research human life. But their arrival did not seem so in vain when they found David's body, which was still undamaged. The alien can research life in the past through the memory in David's brain. Seeing David, who was sad when a statue he was holding was destroyed, the alien tried to make a replica of his house to make him happy. Not only that, but Alien also made him a three-dimensional fairy statue to help explain the purpose of their arrival. Besides that, they can also recreate humans using the remaining organs or body parts. Not long after, the teddy bear approached and gave David a haircut so that he had a chance to meet his mother again. However, everything that was recreated could only last for one day. The alien's purpose is to do all that because they can read David's thoughts and feelings. Therefore, they want to make him happy, even if only for one day. Even so, David was very enthusiastic when meeting with his mother. He doesn't seem to want to waste a second of their moment. When it was dark, it was time for David and his mother to part. At the last moment, she said that she loved him very much. Hearing that touched him. He said he wanted to sleep with his mother and then dream for the first time in his life. The moral that can be learned from this movie is that even if a robot does everything in its power, it is still a robot. But a human who loses his human nature is no better than a robot.